Welcome to the Fortified Life Podcast, where we learn how to develop a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. From the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Here's our host, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, stewardship coach, and my husband, the man they call Mr. Fortified, Jason Davis.
What's going on, everybody? Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortified. We're back for another episode of the Fortified Life Podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. Every single week, we have guests on, from coaches to entrepreneurs and best-selling authors, talking about how their faith is a big part of how they do business, and it's no different today. Ladies and gentlemen, someone that I have been very excited to have for a while on the show. But before I introduce her, let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a Ramsey personality. She's an author, she's a speaker, and she's got a dynamic, powerful story. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Fortified Life Podcast, Jade Warshaw. Jade, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Mr. Fortified. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, Jade, we know that you didn't just all of a sudden wake up here at Ramsey. So kind of give us a little bit of background on how you became a Ramsey personality and also what you were doing prior to this. Because just from following you, I know that's a really cool story too, as far as what you were involved in career-wise prior to this.
Yeah, for us, it started with our own financial journey. Obviously, Ramsey Solutions is known for helping people with their life and their money. And so they did that for me. Back in 2007, when my husband and I got married, we kind of awoke to the idea and to the reality that we had tons and tons of debt. We didn't really know exactly how much until we started digging into it, and realized that by the time it would all be through, it'd be almost $500,000 of consumer debt. And so we needed help with that. And so we found, at the time, Dave Ramsey, and we found the book, The Total Money Makeover, and we started kind of going through that journey of paying off the debt. And whenever you embrace something that deeply, it really does get into you, right? Because it's changing your life from the inside out. And whenever something's changed your life from the inside out, you can't help but talk about it, and you can't help but be a part of it. And so later on down the road, when I had the opportunity to be a part of it, it was kind of like, I have to look into this. I have to, look more into this and see if it's an option. And it turned out that it was. And so 2020 offered a very unique opportunity for many of us to slow down and kind of be still and look around and notice things that we never noticed before. And so for my husband and I, during 2020, everything had shut down, including our business at the time. And it was during that time that I got an email from Ramsey Solutions that said, hey, we're hiring for personalities. And my husband was like, hey, we've always joked that, if you ever worked for anybody, it'd be Dave Ramsey. And so maybe this is the chance. And so both of us kind of agreed that it was best to wait until life kind of went back to usual, to truly make that decision, right? Like, let life get back to normal, let our business come back, and then we can decide. And when that did happen, it still felt right. And so we went on forward with it after 2 years of interviewing with Ramsey. I joined in September of 2022.
Jade, that is just every time you share that, it's just such an awesome story. A big theme, and there are several, Jade, with your background, is just what it means to transition. We all know what happened back in 2020, but for you and your husband to come together and say, you know what, let's actually do this. It sounds easy. It sounds easy because we weren't there, Jade, but just talk to us about what that transition.
Oh man, bro, I was like Moses. I felt like I was going to a land that nobody knew about, because my whole life I'd been a musician and an artist and a business owner. And so for, the people around you, they don't always understand. And it's like, wait a minute, what are you going to do? We thought that you were going to, they know you in one way. And when you start showing this other side of you, a lot of times people don't understand it. Plus, God is not talking to them about your life. So the hardest part, I think, was in many ways having to explain to other people, or choose not to explain to other people, that this is the route that I think I'm supposed to go, and you don't get an opinion, right? And so my husband and I were really aligned on that. And, the rest remains to be seen. It's working out, and God's got his hand on it. And so I think that's the hardest part, is when you've kind of taken on a role in life or a character in life, and that's who you are to your spouse, and that's who you are to your friends and your neighbors and your church. And whenever you try to shake outside of that, it can be difficult, right? And so many times we feel like that imposter syndrome of, no, you're supposed to be this person. And one of the things that I realized during that time is multiple things can be true in one moment. Like, you don't have to forsake one thing to become another. It's like, no, I'm still a musician. I'm still an entrepreneurial. I still have the heart of an entrepreneur. I'm just moving into a new role. It doesn't mean that those things are no longer true. They've just evolved, and they've come to encompass this new truth about me as well, which is I have something to offer the finance space.
I love it, Jade. Just talking about the reality of transition, because, coming out of the pandemic, now that we're in 2024, people are still trying to feel out, what's this new landscape like. So I know that nugget of wisdom for sure when it comes to transition will help folks. Now, Jade, the one of the biggest parts of your story, you and your husband paying off $460,000. To some people, Jade, they're like, "Oh my God!" But you stand here today, a living testament that, hey, that was a large number, and by the grace of God, it came tumbling down. But how did you all even get started? Like, how did you just decide? Dave talks about this a lot on the show. You have to have that "I've had it" moment. What was it for you and your husband?
Like I said, we had just gotten married, and I think we kind of started to do what a lot of couples do, which is you start thinking about the future and, oh, what would it look like one day to have a family? And what would it look like one day to have a house? And, you start dreaming about what your life can be. And for us, it was kind of like the minute we snapped out of that dream, we realized, oh my gosh, if we continue on the road that we're on, none of that will be possible. Like, it will be absolutely impossible, because we're not doing anything to contribute to that. Everything we're doing is eroding that dream. And so I think for us, that was the clarifying moment of, you can either ignore this and wake up 15 years from now and not achieve any of that, or you can say, listen, the time is going to pass. And when that 15 years passes, or when that 10 years passes, I'm going to be way closer to where I want to be. Right. And so for us, that was the challenge. And I remember it was kind of backed up because a couple of weeks later we had gone to church, and there was a guest pastor speaking, and he literally said the words, he said, the time is going to pass anyway. So you can look up, and in 10 years from now, you have three options. You can be the same, the worse off, or better. And when he said that, I was like, this is like confirmation. Like, we have to put in the work, and it's not to say that it's going to be easy, but we've got to do this. And so we went over to Barnes and Noble, and we got the book, The Total Money Makeover. And it was a workbook, was the version that we got. And you could like plug in your numbers and write the stuff in there. And I just remember being so overwhelmed, because one of the areas talked about like how much money you have in the bank and how much money you're making. And it was just, as I was plugging in the numbers, I was seeing like for myself, wow, like I knew it was bad, but this is really bad. And I think, some people, if you're the personality trait that you can just be motivated and it doesn't take anything, you just go and do right, more power to you. But I do think that there is power in rock bottom, because when you hit rock bottom, there's no place to go but up. And I think at that moment, when I saw those numbers in the workbook, I was like, this is it. Like, this is the bottom. And so anything I do right now to take a step forward is a step forward. And so that began a 7.5-year journey of paying off debt, starting at $30,000 combined income, and year over year, finding a way to increase that income, finding a way to build a business in the midst of all of that, until the point that finally, we were able to do our debt-free scream in 2017.
Very cool, Jade. I love how just the process of coming together, you and your husband, and laying it out, going to Barnes and Noble. You've talked about this on the show before. Sometimes you just need a change of environment to generate ideas and get things down on paper. So that's a great reminder for our audience. Now, Jade, 7.5 years can be a long time. The older
it is.
get, the longer I get, it seems like it's shorter. But when you're in it, it can feel, man, 7.5 years feels like 10 or 15. So, Jade, what did you all do to have so it's one thing to start, but it's another to maintain and see it through. Talk about the journey of what was that really like? Like, man, I'm excited. We're doing this 6 months, a year, but then, oh man, here comes 2 years and 3 years, and you're starting to get a little antsy and itchy. So give the people some background on that.
I think that, again, knowing that, hey, this time's going to pass anyway, that was a huge thing for me. But the other thing was my husband and I, we both had these really clear goals that existed aside from each other, but also that when we got together, we shared them. And it was like, oh yeah, I can get on board with that. And from the time I met my husband, regardless of what financial situation that we were currently in, he used to say, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. He said it all the time. Oh, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be a millionaire. By the time I'm 30, like it was just part of his normal everyday language. And I then also had this vision. It was literally a vision that I had of myself walking my would-be child to school. And in the vision, I could sense that I was completely financially free. And I had the autonomy to walk him to school and pick him up from school and be there. And it was just something I could sense in my body. And so both of us had these visions of a better life in our body. And what I want to say to people is, whether or not it's true, or whether or not it ends up coming true, in those moments, that can serve as the ultimate motivator, because we were not millionaires by the time we were 30, but we made it, and that's the thing. It doesn't have to be that you hit it exactly right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's exactly the way I imagined it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't pick up my kids and take them to school every single morning, but the essence of what I was trying to get to, I got to. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it's important to let those things drive you, and not let anybody take it away and say something like, well, if you do the math, there's no way you're going to be a millionaire by the time you're 30. Like, hey, like, don't bust my bubble. Like, don't rain on my parade. This thing is driving me. And so let it drive me. And so in those moments, whenever Sam would say, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30, all I'm doing is like, yes, how do we get to it? Let's go. And when I would say, hey, I have this vision to be able to take kids to school, he's not going, have you seen real estate prices? There's no way you're going to be able to live in a place where you can walk your kid to school. You see what I'm saying? Like, you've got to let yourself live in those moments, and you've got to protect those moments and not let anybody take them away, because for a lot of people, that's all you have. Mm-hmm. Like, the math doesn't math, right? And real estate prices aren't saying what you want them to say. And there's a lot of outside factors that honestly aren't lifting up what your vision is at all. But if you focus on that, you'll never get there. So just focus on that vision that you have. And in many ways, that can be enough to sustain you and give you the motivation you need.
Jade, I don't know, but I'm getting fired up just from you. You did the so what, now what? That's pretty
exactly.
You and your husband did. Jade, I don't know. You may want to look into, if you hadn't talked to any athletic teams, you may want to look into this. I was ready to run out the tunnel a second ago.
Let's go.
Now, Jade, you released your first book, the first of many, I believe, to come. But money's not a math problem. Jade, why did you write this book, and what problem are you trying to solve for, or helping readers solve? What problem are you helping readers solve with it?
So, money's not a math problem. It's a book on the mindset that it takes to really create a plan for your money, which is a budget, right? And so for my husband and I to get out of debt, the crux of everything that we did was being able to get on a budget and stick to a budget. And I don't know about anybody else, but I had the sense that I wasn't the only person who struggled and struggles with that. And I was able to kind of trace back, and over the course of 7.5 years, right, I had time to sit with this and think like, okay, like, what are the things that are holding me back? Why do I get a pit in the stomach when I think about having a plan for my money? Why do I feel like someone's raining on my parade when they talk about a budget? And so I kind of wanted to unpack all of those feelings of what keeps people from budgeting. Because for most of us, it's not dollars and cents. Like, it's not the math, it's not the money that's the problem. It's how we feel about the thing and what emotion it sparks in us when someone says, hey, you really should get on a plan for your money. Most of us, that's like fighting words, right? It's like, well, you're judging me, or you're trying to put me in the corner. You're trying to take something away from me. Like, we just get very defensive when somebody mentions those terms. And so money's not a math problem really goes through 5 of the negative, untrue beliefs that I had about budgeting, like the triggers that made me be like, hey, budgeting's not for me. Like, budgeting, that's a punishment, or budgeting is for poor people, or, a budget, like, this is best done by yourself. Like, those were all the things that I felt. And it was because of the relationships I'd been in, the way I grew up, the way I experienced money and finance for, 30 years of my life. And so hopefully people see themselves in those lies and untrue beliefs. And then I come back and counter it with, hey, once I kind of pushed back against those things and kind of really searched for what the truth was, I was able to come up and kind of counteract those with 5 truths that really are true that you can believe to kind of push yourself forward and push past those lies that hold so many of us back.
So good, Jade. People hear that B word and it starts sending a chill down the back of their spine.
Listen, that was almost one of the titles, the B word.
The B word. That's good. I like that, Jade. Jade, why do you believe, and I know you probably talk about some of this directly in the book, but just behaviorally and when it comes to habits, why do you believe it gets that? It's like, oh, it just feels so restrictive. Just the mentioning of the word.
I think it has to do with what your experience has been. I always say that you behave like you believe, right? And so your behavior reflects what you believe about a thing. And so a lot of us at the core, the reason that we struggle with doing financial principles is we don't know that it will really work for us. There's a lack of belief somewhere that this is actually the method. This could actually work for someone in my situation, with my income, with my skin color. Like, we do put up walls based off of what we've seen and what we've experienced. And so we have to remember that every experience is not the worst thing we've ever experienced, right? And so I talk about in the book how when I was coming up, the budget, man, that was the reason that we said no to everything. It's like, oh, we ain't got no money, it ain't in the budget, we ain't gonna do it, and so it became very negative, like, oh, budgets mean you don't get to do anything. Budgets mean it's no fun. Budgets are a punishment. And it's like, if you did something that wasn't in the budget, it's like, now you're in trouble. You know what I mean? And so all of these things, or then you're in a relationship where somebody's controlling the money or lording over the money. And so now you're like, hey, I don't want to combine my money with this guy or this woman. And all of those things just filter into how we see money, when really, a budget is for everybody. It's like a toothbrush. Like, you got to brush your teeth every day. You got to take care of like oral hygiene, and a budget is the same way. It's a habit that you interact with every day to make sure that your finances are in good health. It's not inherently, it's necessary for everybody, whether you have a lot of money or a little bit of money. And the thing that I really highlight in the book is that you're in charge of this. Like, whatever you experienced in the past, chances are you lost some form of control, or you didn't have some bit of control. But with the way I teach budgeting, I'm like, listen, you're in control. You get to choose where this money goes. It's custom organization. Like, it's for you to help you get to where you want to go. And I think reframing all of that is really important for a lot of people, especially people who have had some form of trauma when it comes to money.
Mm-hmm. Love the conversation about budgeting, Jade. Now, Jade, you get this question a lot on the show too. Like, Jade, I'm with you. I agree. I need a budget, but I don't even know where to get started. So talk to us about the element of how you get started with budgeting, and maybe what even encompasses a budget. Because I know that's, people are like, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah. So the best budget is a zero-based budget. That's what we call it. And this is you might hear a lot of other methods out there, but I think the zero-based budget is the best method. It's basically you saying, hey, if I get paid $3,000 a month, or if I get paid $6,000 a month, I decide ahead of time before the month begins how I'm going to spend every dollar of that money. And so it's not just bills. It's not just, the things I got to do. It's the extra money too, the margin. We're going to give an assignment to that as well. And I talk about that in the book, thinking that, a budget is just, as long as you pay your bills, you're good. And the rest of the money is there to just treat yourself. But then you realize, man, that's a lot of money that I've been treating myself with. And I can't even really give an account to what I did. And so with the budget, a zero-based budget is great because you go through and you can not only take care of all the things you need to take care of, but you can assign categories for the fun stuff. Like you get your nails done and you got to get an edge up and, now, oh, we need a new lawnmower. And at least you can be able to look back and go, I see how I spent my money and I'm either really happy with that or I see how frivolous I've become. And so it's always a good measurement because so many people, I think right now the stat is always changing, but I think right now it's 72% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And a lot of that is because they're not on a budget. They have no idea where their money is being spent. And for a lot of Americans, if they would just put it in an app or put it on paper, they would see, oh, I see like DoorDash is taking all my money, or I see these subscriptions have got me, strapped. And so it really is a powerful tool when you use it. The budget I love most is called Every Dollar. It's an app. You can do it on desktop or you can do it on your phone. And I love it because for spouses, it's great. It's one login. You do it together. You can see it in real time. I can look at it on my phone. My husband can see it on his phone. And it makes it easy to be on one accord. Whereas like a spreadsheet, it's like usually on one person's computer, one person kind of has control over it and they don't want anybody else to like mess with the spreadsheet, right? And so this kind of takes all of that away, evens out the playing field. And it's like, okay, we're both on here. We can both see it. I can see that you went to CVS yesterday and spent $17.16. Like it's helpful. It helps bridge the gap where communication is lacking.
I could not agree more, Jade. My wife, we've been using Every Dollar for years, so I absolutely love it. And it has even more features now today
more than before, yeah.
Than when it started. My goodness. And folks, we'll have in the show notes all of Jade's, when it's time to go. She's not going yet, but when it is time for Jade to leave us, we'll have all her contact information. We'll also have links to the Every Dollar budgeting app. Jade, in the final chapter of your book, you give a glimpse of hope. What does it look like on the other side of paying off the $460,000? So just cast some of that vision and hope for the reader, and even just today, what that freedom and flexibility looks like for you and your family.
Yeah. In the book, I talk about how it used to give me so much anxiety going to the grocery store because I was given, I'm trying to get the things that my family needs. And it's basic stuff. Like I'm trying to get toilet paper and I'm trying to get, just a couple of things for dinner. And there I am sweating, wondering if my card is going to go through or wondering if the payment's going to bounce. And, then you got to deal with the embarrassment of, I'm sorry, ma'am, but your card says declined, right? And I know people experience that, right? That is even though many times it's private, like you could even be at the self-checkout, but if your card declines, it like does something to you that you're like, ugh, like it's so embarrassing. And it embarrasses you on deep levels. It's like, what kind of I'm not a good adult. Like I am not taking care of my family well. I'm not working. My job is not providing enough. Like it starts eroding at your personal confidence at many layers. And so I experienced that for a number of years. And a lot of that was what, again, was the driver to get out and be willing to walk down this path for 7.5 years. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And a lot of people say, well, Jade, was it worth it? You spent 7.5 years of budgeting and sacrificing and working and just working crazy hours. And now you're on the other side. Was it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it, because back then a $20 purchase would have overdrawn me. And now, I go into Costco and I don't know, maybe it's going to be $600. Maybe it's going to be $618. And I know the money's there. I know I've budgeted for it. I know I'm not going to get yelled at when I get home. I know that there's not going to be this, my inner self is not going to be beating me up for not being a good, handling my money correctly and being an irresponsible adult and all of these things. All of that is over. It's in the past. And the only thing I have now is peace when it comes to my finances. And I think so many of us have never even come close to that it's hard for us to believe that it exists. But I'm telling you, it exists. If you are willing to walk a plan, if you are willing to do something that feels counterintuitive for a little while, most people who walk the baby steps, which is the plan that my husband and I did, most people are done paying off their debt in 2 years or less. So I was worse than average, but most people are average, and so this is a very real, very tactical plan that works for millions and millions of people. And I always want to highlight the fact that sometimes when you start a plan, it's okay to be skeptical. Like, it's okay to go into it and go, I don't know, Dave, this paying cash for cars, I don't know about all that. But I came into it that way. And then when the time came to buy a car in cash, I was like, wow, this really does work. When he was like, hey, cut up all the credit cards, I remember being like, I don't know, Dave, about cutting up all the credit cards. And then I just went ahead and did it and realized, oh, okay, like this really does work. So I just want to encourage people. You're going to hear some things that you've never heard before, and it's going to challenge you to do some things and think in a way that you've never thought of before. And that's okay, because then you have to ask yourself, well, have I ever been financially free before? No. Have I ever been able to help millions of people pay off debt and build $1 million net worths? No, you haven't. And that means your plan doesn't work, which means you have to find one that does work. And this plan works not only for me, but millions of people have just found freedom and peace with their money. And so that's my plug. That's to encourage somebody to just walk through these steps. Oh man, you can find it wherever books are sold, Amazon.com, RamseySolutions.com. You can find it there as well. That's probably the best place to find it. And if you're just trying to connect with me personally, I'm on all socials as Jade Warshaw, but the one I hang out on most is Instagram. And if anybody is interested in that Every Dollar, by the way, you can go to everydollar.com/Jade and get yourself a promo code.
Folks, she's dropping all the knowledge, all the tools. I'm telling you, we'll have all this in the show notes too. JerichoForce.com/podcast. We'll have it in the show notes. Jade, before you go, as a Ramsey personality, we see you on the Ramsey Show. You travel around speaking. If you could give us any sneak peek, Jade, that you're allowed to, but is there anything cool you're working on? We're coming into the top of the month of May. Is there anything that you're excited about that's upcoming now that we're getting to the top end of the month of May?
Yeah, we're working on a couple of pilots for a show that I'm doing, which is basically I'm not sure what we're calling it yet, but it's like a 90-day money makeover where we're basically following people for 90 days to help them. Obviously on the show we take quick calls and help folks, but this is us saying, hey, let's go a layer deeper. And so we're going on a journey financially with people for 90 days to help them have the biggest turnaround financially in their life. And so right now we're working on 3 different pilots. And so hopefully they'll be out. I don't want to say when they'll be out, because then they'll be like, Jade, you said it was coming out. It's not coming out yet.
Sure,
but we're working on it. But I think it's going to be called like 90-day money makeover or 90-day payoff or something like that. So stay tuned. Listen, if you're interested in being on the show, you can email in RamseySolutions.com/ask.
I love it. Well, Jade, I know that I could certainly talk to you another 3 hours, but unfortunately we don't have enough time to do that. And she's got to get back to doing different things with Jade. This has been a wonderful conversation. You've really challenged, you've really inspired and encouraged us. Anything you want to leave the listeners with before we go?
Yeah, again, just the idea that, it's a journey, and just embrace the journey. Like, good things take time, great things take longer, and the best things sometimes can take a lifetime. And so just be willing to walk through that and don't get discouraged when you see a long timeline. Awesome.
Well, folks, we're going to let Jade go. Jade, thank you so much for coming out and being on the Fortified Life podcast. I know this conversation is going to bless a ton of people.
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks so much, Jason.
Yep. Folks, well, you know how we leave things. Don't compartmentalize your faith. and the marketplace, and from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Fortified Life Podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out fortifieddlifepodcast.com for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortified: Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.